At the edge of my village lies an old cemetery, right by the canal, where the uneven embankment winds along under the shade of tamarind and cassia trees. Every evening, the place exudes a quiet melancholy. That cemetery has existed for over 100 years, holding countless lives and stories from generations past. And for the past 30 years, only one man has watched over it, Old Man Sao. People call him Sao the Gravekeeper. His image has long been tied to that resting place. Every morning, he pushes an old bicycle, carrying a broom made of bamboo, gently sweeping leaves from each grave, pulling weeds, and lighting incense for the graves no one visits. In the afternoons, he sits on a stone bench and watches the sunset. When it rains, he still shows up, wearing a raincoat and conical hat, quietly lighting incense in the center of the cemetery. I've known him since I was little. Back then, I used to sneak into the cemetery to play with mud and water, often following him from a distance. One day, I got curious when I saw him talking to a grave, gently breaking off a yellow chrysanthemum branch and laying it on the stone. I asked, "Who are you talking to?" "Grandpa? The dead," he replied, "but sometimes, they listen better than the living." I ran home and told my mother. She simply nodded and said, "He's a kind man, but those who carry a great dead don't speak much." Child. In his youth, his real name was Tran Van Quang. He came from Ba Chu village. His father passed away early, and his mother made a living as a traveling vendor. He only finished 7th grade before dropping out to do odd jobs, breaking stones, carrying bricks, eventually becoming a mason. Life was hard and unchanging. When his mother fell ill, they didn't even have money for medicine. One stormy night, he sneaked into the temple and stole the bronze bell and wooden fish. He sold them for 300 dong, just enough for some medicine. His mother survived 3 more days, then passed away. After the funeral, once everyone had gone home, he sat by her altar, dazed and broken. That night, he dreamt his mother stood in the middle of the cemetery, holding a half-burned incense stick. Her face was solemn as she pointed toward an old grassy mound. From that night on, every night, he heard a voice, "Sao." People started saying he was cursed. Some muttered cruel words. "When the dead call your name at night, you belong to the other side." But he said nothing. The guilt, the regret, deep and silent, had soaked into his blood. He left the village and disappeared for a year. When he returned, no one was waiting. Only the cemetery remained unchanged. He sought out Uncle Tu, the previous gravekeeper. He said simply, "I'd like a small corner of land to build a shack. I'll sweep leaves and light incense each day." Uncle Tu looked at him for a while, then sighed. "So, you've started hearing them too? Huh? Fine then. Go on. A debt paid is a debt cleared. And knowing you were wrong, that's already something." And so, Old Man Sao became the lone caretaker. 30 years, one man, one shack, one cemetery, and every night, the same whisper, "Sao." Day by day, he'd walk the grounds, gazing at the tombstones like they were old friends. Some graves, he remembered by birth and death dates. Others, nameless, he gave nicknames. Auntie in the brown shirt, little black-haired boy, the kid with the red hat in the photo. Names no one remembered, but to him, each one had a voice. One rainy day, I asked him, "Aren't you cold out here?" He smiled. "Just like the living. Child, if I don't come, who'll wipe the leaves, warm the stones, or offer them a bit of light?" One late night, I heard the wind blowing, tamarind leaves rustling, and amid it all, a voice, "Sao." I ran to his shack. He was still sitting there, hands resting on his knees, eyes half closed, still as stone. "Did you hear that, Grandpa?" "Yes. 30 years now, child." I shivered, but I wasn't scared. For some reason, within that silence was a strange sense of peace. They say once he saved a little girl who had fallen into an old well in the cemetery. Her mother brought her back to thank him, crying uncontrollably. There was no one around. I screamed for help. "Then you just appeared. How did you know?" He only replied, "Someone called me, told me to save the child." The woman went quiet. The girl hugged his leg and laughed. Every full moon, He tidies the cemetery, arranging incense bundles, collecting trash, burning dry grass. He's always quiet. No one's ever seen him laugh loudly or get angry. Yet anyone who meets him respects him, not out of fear, but because there's something deeply solemn in his presence. 30 years, not for counting days, but to gather each dream, each whisper, each regret. He lived without a wife, without children, no home, only a shack and the wind of the cemetery as companions. I grew up and left for school, but every time I returned, I'd stop by. I'd bring him tea and snacks. He was still the same, slow, gentle, and with eyes that seemed never to have rested. One afternoon, I asked, "Have you ever thought of leaving, Grandpa?" "No, someone's still waiting here." "Who?" "Maybe my mother. Maybe those who never got to finish a sentence." That rainy season, I came back after college entrance exams. My village hadn't changed, still poor but peaceful, with mossy roofs and the muddy canal flowing quietly past the nipa palms. Everything was the same, except me. Grown up, and Grandpa Sao. Still alone in that old cemetery shack. I brought some tea, old books, and a small radio, hoping to sit and talk with him like we used to. When I arrived, he was trimming grass around the biggest grave, the one belonging to the village elder. "Back already, child?" "Yes. How are you?" "Still breathing. That's all the health I need." I sat on the stone bench. The breeze was soft. Chrysanthemums swayed gently beside the gravestones. In the afternoon light, the cemetery wasn't scary at all. Not when Grandpa Sao was there. People always said there was something strange about him, but no one could bring themselves to dislike him. I asked, "Do you ever dream of your loved ones?" He set down his shears and wiped his brow. "Yes, my mother." "Do you dream of her often?" "It's not really a dream. It's more like, I remember her so much. She shows up." He stood, poured water from an old aluminum kettle. "Let me tell you about the first night I heard the voice." After his mother died, he didn't eat, didn't speak, just lay in bed for days. That night, he finally dozed off. In his dream, he saw a white field, a gentle breeze, and the faint scent of incense. His mother stood not far away, hair tied neatly, wearing a brown blouse. She didn't smile. Her eyes were deep. She pointed toward a small shrine in the field. "There, go there, son." He woke up drenched in sweat. And that night, for the first time, he heard the voice, "Sao." At first, he thought it was grief haunting him. But the voice came back night after night, not loud, not close, just like the wind slipping through a wall of leaves. "Sao, oi?" He left the village, but wherever he went, the voice followed, until he grew tired, and returned. "Was it your mother who brought you back?" He nodded. "Yes, but she didn't take my hand. She took my soul. Once, after her third death anniversary." He sat quietly beside her grave. The sky was gray, the breeze cool. He dozed off beside the stone. In his dream, his mother appeared again. She didn't speak, just stroked his hair. Then sighed. "I'm not angry, but there's someone else still waiting." When he woke up, he looked around, startled. On his chest lay a fresh yellow chrysanthemum. That day, no one else had visited the grave. No one had picked any flowers. I asked, "Do you know who that someone else is? The one still waiting?" Grandpa Sao shook his head. "No, but after that, I started dreaming of strangers. The young dead, the forgotten, those who'd been lying here so long. Even their names had faded. From then on, he swept more graves, lit more incense. Every night, he burned exactly 3 sticks and whispered, 'I'm Sao. I don't know who you are, but if anyone needs to speak, I'm listening.'" I sat there in silence, each of his words falling like the first drops of summer rain. Every story he told was like a piece of a forgotten soul, no horror, no screaming, just gentle whispers, soft as the wind, deep as the earth. I asked, "Aren't you scared?" He gazed into the distance. I was, at first, but then I realized, there are things scarier than ghosts. It's knowing you've done wrong, and not having the courage to come back. The summer I was in 12th grade, I decided to stay in the village for the entire 3 months instead of going back to the city for extra classes like my classmates. Partly because I missed home, and partly because I felt like I had started to understand Mr. Sao a little more. Every afternoon, I would go to the cemetery and sit on the stone bench next to his shack. I'd bring an iced milk coffee, sometimes a cold baguette, to share with him. Some days we talked, some days we just sat in silence. But Mr. Sao never seemed bothered. On the contrary, it felt like he appreciated my presence. One gray afternoon, as the clouds gathered, Mr. Sao told me a story he said was the first time I realized I wasn't afraid of ghosts anymore, but began to hear them speak. It happened 3 months after he returned to the village. That was when he had just asked Mr. Tu for permission to stay and take care of the cemetery. During the day, he did odd jobs to earn meals. In the evening, he swept graves and slept in a makeshift hut built with 4 bamboo poles and a roof of palm leaves. The hut was tiny, just enough space to lay down a mat, place a kerosene lamp, and hang a photo of his mother by the bed. That night was hot and humid. Mr. Sao tossed and turned. Around midnight, just as he had fallen asleep, he felt something heavy press down on his chest. He tried to move, but couldn't. His whole body was pinned. And then he heard breathing right next to his face. He panicked. For a split second, he thought someone had broken in. He wanted to scream but couldn't open his mouth. Then, the scent of yellow chrysanthemums filled the air. The fear faded. Instead, he felt someone crying. Softly, the chill ran down his spine, not from fear, but from sorrow. The next morning, he didn't tell anyone, but from that night on, he began dreaming of the same girl, dressed in a white oud dye, standing next to a small grave at the far corner of the cemetery. She never spoke, just looked at him. Every single time, he decided to find that grave. And sure enough, there was one, an unnamed grave near the canal, completely covered in weeds. The headstone was weathered, barely showing faded traces of something like Wei or Nguyen. From that day forward, he cared for that grave every day, cleared the grass, planted more yellow chrysanthemums, and placed a small wooden sign with 2 words, "The girl." I asked, "Why didn't you ask anyone who she was?" Mr. Sao replied, "I did, but people said it was an old grave, buried decades ago. They said it belonged to a girl who worked as a servant, drowned, and no one came to claim her body." I sighed. "That's so sad." Mr. Sao was quiet for a moment. Sad or not depends on how we look at it. To me, she was the first one to speak to me in this place. Since he began tending to her grave, his dreams changed. The girl started to smile. He no longer felt the heaviness on his chest. And strangely, whenever he felt down or exhausted, just sitting by her grave would bring him peace. One night, on the full moon of the 7th lunar month, a strong wind howled. He couldn't sleep, hearing rustling sounds all around the hut. But when dawn came, he found a fresh yellow chrysanthemum branch placed on his doorstep. No one knew he lived there. No one would have brought flowers. And the flower, it was the exact kind he had planted beside her grave. I shivered hearing that, but Mr. Sao only smiled. People fear ghosts because they don't understand them. But if we live kindly, sometimes it's the dead who forgive us first. From that day on, among the many graves he tended to, there was always a special spot reserved for the girl. Not out of fear, but out of gratitude. Every time I passed by that grave, I quietly bowed my head. I didn't know her name, or how she lived, but I believed, if someone remembers you, then the departed are still here. In the warmest way, in my village cemetery, 3 things never changed. The old tamarind tree atop the highest mound, Mr. Sao's little shack, and the stone bench beneath the tree, where he sat every evening as the sun disappeared. That stone bench was nothing special. Weathered, mossy, warped by sun and rain. But to Mr. Sao, it was the place where I sit to listen. He said that to me one April afternoon when I brought him a glass of iced tea and saw him wiping the bench with an old rag. "Why clean that old thing, Grandpa? No one looks at it. It's not for looking, it's for someone to sit beside me." Who? Sometimes the living, sometimes the ones who've passed. Ever since returning to the village, Mr. Sao had a habit. Every night, he lit exactly 3 sticks of incense. One for his mother, one for the nameless graves, And one, he never explained, only smiled quietly. I once asked, "Why not light them in the morning?" He answered, "The living need light to find their way. The dead only return at night." Once, out of curiosity, I followed him to where he placed the 3 incense sticks. It was just a grassy mound. No grave, only wild weeds. He knelt down, lit the sticks from a tiny oil lamp, and placed them at the center of the mound, hands clasped in prayer. "Let me send back a promise I never kept." I asked, "A promise to who?" He only shook his head. "You were too young then. One day, when you're older, you'll understand." Time passed. I started university and visited the village less. Each time I returned, the cemetery was the same. Mr. Sao was the same. Only his hair had grown whiter. But the bench, now cleaner, more worn, with a faint dip on the right side, looked like someone had been sitting there often. One night, I came back unexpectedly. It was drizzling, the wind cold, the cemetery veiled in mist. I crept through the small iron gate. Under the tamarind tree, Mr. Sao sat, as always. But what startled me was the bench beside him. A single patch of rainwater had formed a clear human-shaped dip. I didn't say anything, but for the first time, I saw Mr. Sao nod gently toward the empty bench, as if he were listening to someone. His eyes shimmered. The next morning, I told my mom. She looked at me and sighed. "You're grown now. I suppose you should know. Long ago, Mr. Sao loved someone. They were going to marry. But he was too poor. And her family refused. Heartbroken, she left to work far away. Later, they found her body in the canal. She'd drowned for 3 days. No one claimed her, and Mr. Sao was away. He had no idea. I was stunned." Mom continued. "When he finally came back, he learned the truth. They buried her in the center of the cemetery. No headstone, no name. Only one person knew the story, the old gravekeeper. Mr. 2. He passed it on before he died." I returned to the cemetery. The wind still blew. Chrysanthemums still bloomed beside the graves. But from that moment, I understood why Mr. Sao lit 3 incense sticks, and why that stone bench was never truly empty. One evening, I gathered my courage and asked, "Do you ever say anything to her?" Mr. Sao looked out over the field. "Every day, even if she doesn't answer. I believe she still hears me." I cried, not because I feared ghosts, but because, for the first time, I realized that love could outlast death. That afternoon, Mr. Sao brought me to the mound, handed me 3 incense sticks. "Light these for me, and say something to her, if you'd like." I hesitated. What should I say? "Grandpa?" "Whatever you feel, as long as it's sincere." I clasped my hands, closed my eyes, and whispered, "If you can hear me, I'm saying this for Mr. Sao. He's never forgotten you." That night, for the first time in my life, I dreamt of a girl in a white ao dai, long hair flowing, sitting beside the stone bench, smiling gently. She said nothing, just nodded. I woke up, my heart light as the morning mist. And I knew, last night, that bench wasn't empty anymore. In my village, there's a tradition. On the night of New Year's Eve, no matter how poor you are, you must offer something to your ancestors. Some cook a full meal. Others just place a few cups of water and a plate of sticky rice cakes. But sincerity is always present. That night, the village is quieter than usual. People say, that's the moment when yin outweighs yang, and the departed return. That year, as always, Mr. Sao wasn't at anyone's house, nor did he celebrate with anyone. He silently placed 3 incense sticks in the middle of the cemetery while faint firework sounds echoed from the nearby town. Curious, I quietly followed him that night. The wind was cold, sending chills down my back. Mr. Sao wore a warm jacket, held a bundle of incense, and walked quietly to the mound in the center of the graveyard. He lit the sticks one by one, murmuring words I couldn't quite make out, but I heard him say, "This year, I still kept my promise. Still lit 3 incense sticks. Still waited, in case someone remembers their way home." I sat hidden behind the tamarind tree. The later it got, the colder the wind blew. And yet, strangely, the graveyard didn't feel scary at all. On the contrary, the place seemed gently veiled in warmth. Suddenly, I saw a figure walking along the dirt path. It was a man, slim, wearing an old shirt. He walked slowly, head bowed, and stopped in front of a small grave near the stone embankment. I recognized the grave. It belonged to Uncle Lee, a man who once worked as a tricycle driver, who died in an accident 3 years ago. His grave was rarely visited. The man stood there for a long time, then knelt down and cried. The sobs were choked but crystal clear in the quiet night. Mr. Sao stood up and walked toward him. He wasn't afraid, as if he'd seen this before. I stepped closer, about to speak, but in a blink, the figure dissolved into the mist. Gone. Eyes wide, I looked at Mr. Sao. Did you see that? There was someone. He simply nodded, eyes distant. I saw. He comes back every year. But no one notices. Who was he? Uncle Lee's son. Died in a rented room in the next province. Passed suddenly. Never made it home. I was stunned. But he's gone. Yes. He came back to visit his father. But no one remembers him. No one waits. His father's grave isn't even cleaned. So, he keeps coming back. That story haunted me for a long time. I started to pay attention. Every New Year's Eve after that, I would see faint shadows in the cemetery. Not loud, not clear, but it felt like they were searching for a path, for a memory, for a greeting left unsaid. One year, I asked to join Mr. Sao in lighting incense on New Year's Eve. He handed me 3 sticks. One for family, one for strangers, one for those without a name. I placed them at 3 graves. One I knew, one without a name, one half sunken and broken. Afterward, I noticed a small figure standing in the far left corner of the cemetery. A child, face unclear, just standing there, looking toward Mr. Sao. I asked, "Grandpa, who's that child?" Mr. Sao didn't even turn to look. Probably a soul that's never been called. There are many here. Child, not everyone who dies has someone who remembers. That's why I'm here, to light incense on their behalf, to let them know someone's still waiting. Later, I moved farther away, built a life in the city. But every Lunar New Year, I always return, at least by the afternoon of the 30th, to walk the cemetery with Mr. Sao. To place a few incense sticks, and to listen to the footsteps without shadows, the calls without voices, the souls returning, unnoticed. That spring, the village welcomed Tet a little late. The apricot tree behind the house bloomed late. The rice cakes were wrapped late. And Mr. Sao, my old friend in the graveyard, was no longer as quick as before. He often sat longer on the familiar stone bench, eyes gazing silently at the far left corner of the cemetery, where an old mossy brick wall stood. As always, I came home for Tet and visited him first. But this time, he was quieter than usual. When I asked, he simply said, "Someone's about to tell their old story again." I didn't ask more. Whenever he said that, it meant a strange and sad tale was about to unfold. And he was right. On the afternoon of the 3rd day of Tet, the story began. Beside the cemetery was a low, red brick wall, just chest high. Villagers called it Mr. Hoy's Wall, once the property line of a wealthy family from the French colonial era. After 1975, the land was cleared, the graves moved into the cemetery. Only the wall remained. No one dared tear it down. Mr. Sao told me that every year, in the 2nd lunar month, when the monsoon winds returned, he would hear the faint swish of silk behind him as he swept leaves near the wall. Not loud, not urgent, just a soft breeze, carrying a hint of lavender, a scent that didn't exist in our rural village. "Did you know anyone who wore perfume back in the day?" I asked. He nodded, then replied slowly, "There was a girl. Her name was Tram, daughter of Mr. Hoi. She used to come behind the wall to pick flowers. Once, I saw her standing with a young man in a soldier's uniform. That happened in 1974, when war still echoed. Tram, a wealthy heiress, fell in love with a soldier from the south. Her family disapproved. The young man was taken away. Tram cried herself sick, then vanished. No one knew what happened. But after a heavy storm, someone found faint blood stains near the wall, and a white owl dye caught on a wildflower bush. Rumors spread. Some said she became a nun. Others whispered of suicide. No one ever confirmed. Mr. Hoy's family left. The land was abandoned. The wall remained. Years later, when Mr. Sao became the gravekeeper, he discovered that every year on the full moon of the second lunar month, a lavender flower appeared by the wall. No one knew who left it. No one dared go near. One such full moon, he dreamt of a girl in a white dye standing behind the wall, holding a small notebook. She said only one sentence: "If you find someone meant to know, please give them this." Then she disappeared. The next morning, he went to the wall, gently cleared the thick grass, and truly found a faded cloth-wrapped notebook. Inside were handwritten poems and unsent love letters. I held the notebook in my hands, trembling. The slanted handwriting read, "If one day I'm no longer here, please don't be sad. I didn't choose this ending. I just had no other way." I turned to Mr. Sao. "So, what did you do with the notebook?" "I put it back. Not everything we find should be kept. Some pain is only meant to be remembered, not touched." Since then, every second lunar full moon, Mr. Sao still sweeps leaves near the wall. He still leaves the lavender flower untouched. Still sits quietly on the stone bench, like waiting for a love to return. One time, I asked, "Do you think she's still here?" Maybe, but not to haunt, to wait for an apology. Maybe from her father, maybe from the one she loved, who couldn't keep his promise. That afternoon, I placed a sprig of purple flower beside the wall. I didn't know if it was right, but my heart felt lighter. And that night, I dreamt of a girl in a white dye walking through the cemetery. Stopping beside Mr. Sao, she said nothing, just gently placed a hand on his shoulder, then smiled, and vanished into the wind. Mr. Sao probably didn't dream, but the next morning, he told me, "Last night, someone knocked on the hut. I opened the door, no one was there. But the breeze, it smelled sweet, like the first lavender of the season." The summer after I graduated from college, I decided to stay in the village for a month to finish my thesis. The fresh air, my mother's home-cooked meals, and the quiet afternoons wandering the cemetery with Mr. Sao created a strange, peaceful feeling I could never find in the city. That evening, I noticed Mr. Sao sitting longer than usual on the stone bench beneath the tamarind tree. But instead of gazing out at the cemetery like he always did, his eyes were fixed on the gate, where a stooped man was walking in. Slowly, leaning on a cane, he had a worn-out cloth bag slung over his shoulder and a tobacco pipe in his mouth. "Mr. Sao, who's that?" "That's Mr. Tong, an old shaman. Back in the day, everyone called for him. It's been decades since he last came back." I looked at the man's thin frame. Each step he took seemed heavy, like he was walking on the weight of his own memories. Mr. Tong was once famous throughout the region. Before 1975, he was the only one who dared enter graves at midnight to remove curses, cut ties with spirits, or call souls. Then, suddenly, he disappeared. Rumors said he left the trade and retreated to the mountains to live in seclusion. No one knew why. When they saw each other again, Mr. Sao simply nodded. "Hello, old friend. Long time no see. I've come to repay something I never did." They sat in silence. I didn't interrupt. After a while, Mr. Tong began to tell the story. Years ago, he was hired to perform a ritual to cut spiritual ties for a woman said to be haunted. But during the ceremony, he mistakenly read the wrong name. Instead of calling for Nguyen Thi Nak Mai, he read Nguyen Thi Min Mai, which matched the name of a girl who had died unjustly by the river in 1968. After the ritual, the woman got better, but Min Mai's family started experiencing strange things. Her mother fell seriously ill. Their house grew gloomy. Every night, someone knocked at the door, only to find no one there. By the time Mr. Tong realized what had happened and returned to apologize, it was too late. The girl's mother died the day after her daughter's death anniversary. From then on, he quit his work. I thought it was over. But every year, I dream of her. She never blames me, just asks, "You called my name, shaman, so now you must guide me home. So what will you do now?" "I don't know, but I think only Mr. Sao can help." I looked at Mr. Sao and saw deep, quiet sorrow in his eyes. He neither agreed nor refused. He He simply stood and led Mr. Tong to the back of the mound, where the nameless graves were. There, Mr. Sao lit a single incense stick. No chants, no soul calling, just these words. Miss Mai, if you're still here, please listen. That man was wrong, but he knows now. Please, let go, so the living may have a chance to make things right. A breeze stirred, soft as a breath. The incense ash drifted sideways. There was no reply, but Mr. Tong collapsed, sobbing. It was the first time I had seen a shaman cry like a child. That night, I stayed at the cemetery. The moon was bright, the wind gentle. Mr. Sao sat outside the hut, fingering his prayer beads, eyes gazing into the distance. Do you see, child? Some debts can't be repaid with money, only with a lifetime of living kindly. I asked, do you think the girl will forgive him? Maybe not yet, but forgiveness doesn't begin with them. It starts with the one who caused the pain, daring to bow their head. After that day, Mr. Tong stayed in the village. He never practiced again, but every evening, he went to the cemetery, lit one incense stick, and quietly left. And I realized, ghosts are not always what we fear. Sometimes, it's memory, it's guilt, it's the unsaid words, still echoing inside, waiting to be released. When I turned 28, I took a break from my city job to return home and care for my ailing mother. On quiet afternoons, I found myself back in the cemetery, where Mr. Sao still sat, calm and silent as ever. That day, as I walked the dirt path into the cemetery, I saw a stranger, a man in his 50s, dressed in black, was quietly placing a simple stone marker by the corner wall of the cemetery, where there had never been a grave before. I looked at Mr. Sao. He nodded. That's for the coffin no one claimed last year. I suddenly remembered, the previous year, a man's body had been found drifting in the river. His face was unrecognizable, his papers water damaged. No one knew who he was. The local authorities buried him in a vacant corner. No ceremony, no crying, only Mr. Sao lit incense. So, did his family finally find him? No, that man was an old coworker. Came back just to give the dead a name. That night, I sat with Mr. Sao by the small hut. He told me, back then, people called him Uncle Bei Jia. No one knew his real name. He wandered from place to place, doing odd jobs, digging dirt, pushing carts around the provincial market. During heavy rains, he'd sleep in abandoned huts. No wife, no kids. I asked, then how did he end up in the river? Heavy rain that day. Some said he slipped while drunk. Others whispered he jumped. I said nothing. A whole life, ending without anyone knowing, anyone caring. If not for Mr. Sao, he would have been forgotten, like a gust of wind in a cold cemetery. Mr. Sao continued. After the burial, every night, there were soft groans from that corner. Not loud, just like someone mumbling in their sleep, repeating over and over. I'm not done, not done. I shivered. What did you do? I lit incense, just one stick, and said, if there's something you haven't finished, say it, but I'll only listen if you're honest. 3 nights later, he dreamt, a thin man, crouched under a tree, clutching a small notebook. Inside were scraps of paper with names, addresses, and shaky writing. Return the money. I owed too much. The next morning, Mr. Sao went to the grave, gently dug behind the headstone, and truly found an old plastic pouch. Damp and moldy. Inside were 4 school notebook pages listing people's names, all poor folks from the market. So, he lived poor, but gave out loans to anyone who asked, wrote it all down, then died before he could collect, and no one ever repaid him. I sat there for a long time, thinking about people like Uncle Bei, quiet, forgotten, who passed without a trace. That night, for the first time, I lit incense for his grave myself. I whispered, if you can hear me, I didn't know you, but I remember you, because you once lived here, under the same sky. Mr. Sao looked at me, eyes welling. Thank you, child. Not everyone remembers those without a name. From then on, Uncle Bei's grave had fresh flowers, brought by me every month. Maybe no one else cared, but at least, I knew he wouldn't be forgotten again. And sometimes at night, through the wind rustling past the stone wall, I thought I heard a soft voice say, "Thank you, I can go now." That July, the sun blazed mercilessly for 3 straight weeks. The fields were bone dry. Tamarind leaves scattered across the path to the cemetery. People kept saying heavy rain was coming, but the sky never opened until that night. Without warning, the wind roared to life. I was sleeping at home when the gusts howled through the woven bamboo walls, waking me just as I was about to lie back down. My phone rang. It was Mr. Sao. "Can you come to the hut? The wind's strong, and something strange is happening." I didn't ask questions. I threw on a raincoat, strapped on a headlamp, and followed the muddy path leading to the cemetery. The wind whipped wildly, dirt swirling in the air. But once inside the graveyard, it was eerily calm. When I arrived, Mr. Sao was sitting outside his hut, holding a warm tea flask. He pointed toward the old tamarind tree, where the dirt path was thick with fallen leaves. "Do you see anything?" I shined my light in the direction he pointed, and sure enough, fresh muddy footprints appeared in the dry soil. Small, uneven prints that stretched from the riverside to the base of the tamarind tree. But the oddest part, it hadn't rained yet. We followed the footprints. Near the tree's roots, we found something wrapped in a thin plastic sheet. Inside was a bundle of damp clothes, like it had just been soaked in water. Unfolding it, we found a child's old wool sweater and a yellowed note. I shined my light and read the messy handwriting. "If anyone finds this, please light a stick of incense for my child. I'm sorry, I didn't have the courage to raise them." I was frozen. Mr. Sao said nothing, just gently picked up the sweater and held it to his chest. "It's been 8 years. Every monsoon season, I hear a child crying around this tree. No one believed me, but I believed. I asked, 'You never found anything before?' No, only that each time I heard the crying, the next day there would be a broken tamarind twig left on the rock. Like someone had visited and left a sign." The next morning, the rain finally came. It poured down, washing the cemetery clean, scrubbing away the thick dust of the dry season. Mr. Sao and I dug a small spot near the tamarind tree, laid the sweater to rest, lit incense, and set up a simple headstone that read, "For a small soul who never had a name." Mr. Sao said, "Some children are born never being chosen, but they still deserve to be remembered." I looked at him, eyes stinging. "Should we tell the authorities?" "We will, but this soul needs comfort first. No one should lie in the cold earth without someone saying their name." That night, I dreamed. I saw a child, maybe 5 years old, hair messy, holding a tamarind twig. They stood beneath the tree, looking toward the hut, then smiled. No crying, no running, just looking, then vanished into the rain. The next morning, I told Mr. Sao. He simply said, "Yeah, that means it's at peace now." Since that year, every monsoon season, Mr. Sao leaves a small teddy bear and a box of milk under the tamarind tree. No one tells him to. No one reminds him, but I know he remembers. And I, the one who witnessed it all, can only hope that if any soul lingers nearby, at least it knows someone once loved it. It was harvest season in my village. The golden rice fields stretched far and wide, and the sound of threshing machines echoed through every alley. Adults were busy, children excited. Everyone believed it marked the beginning of abundance. But me, back from the city just in time, felt strangely empty. Because of one thing. I no longer saw Mr. Sao sitting on the stone bench every afternoon. The last time I saw him was earlier that month. He was still well, still smiled gently, but there was something deeper in his eyes. That day, he asked me to write a letter for him, not to send to anyone, just to keep in his coat pocket. In case I leave one day, without getting the chance to say anything. I gave a nervous laugh. "Don't say that, you're still stronger than all of us. Child, no one lives forever, but everyone deserves a proper way to go." I wrote. His words came slowly, each sentence measured. "If someone finds this letter, please don't be sad. I chose to stay here not because I had nowhere else to go, but because I had once done wrong. I stayed to listen, to remember, to repay, and now I believe I've been forgiven." The next morning, my mom came into my room. They found Mr. Sao asleep under the tamarind tree, and he didn't wake up. I skipped breakfast and ran straight to the cemetery. He was still sitting on the bench. Just like always, hands resting gently on his knees. His brown shirt still faintly smelled of incense. On the bench beside him was a fresh bundle of incense sticks and a yellow chrysanthemum. No one knew who left them. Maybe it was someone he once lit incense for. Or maybe it was from another realm. The burial was simple. They laid him to rest beside the tamarind tree, the place he lived. The place he watched over. The place he listened for 30 years. The whole village came. Some brought incense. Some slipped thank you letters into the grave. Even the children were there, playing in the dirt. But when the shaman began the rites, every one of them stood still. That night, I stayed in his hut one last time. The breeze swept through the bamboo walls. Suddenly, I heard footsteps along the path. Slow, gentle, familiar, like Mr. Sow's from years ago. I didn't get up, just lay there, eyes stinging. Through the breeze, I heard a faint whisper. "Thank you, child, I can go now." The next morning, when I lit incense at his grave, something unusual happened. The incense burned perfectly straight. No tilt. They say, that's a sign of peace. And I believe it. Since that day, I light incense every full moon in his place. I can't replace him, but I know, if no one carries on, these things will disappear. Like memory, like kindness, like an apology. On his small headstone, I carved an extra line. The one who watched over graves. The one who kept his word. The one who was forgiven. And I believe, among the thousands of souls in that silent cemetery, there is one who once listened to them all, and is now resting peacefully. So it was, the man who guarded the cemetery for 30 years chose to leave in silence. No tears, no drums, no music, but those who heard his stories, those for whom he once lit incense, will never forget him. Because he didn't just guard graves. He preserved memories. He preserved hearts. He preserved kindness in a world rushing to forget small things. If you ever saw a piece of yourself in this story, if you've ever been wrong, ever regretted, ever quietly tried to live better, then maybe you, too, are repaying a debt of your own. Like Mr. Sow, thank you for staying with me through this journey. If this story touched you, please leave a comment, a like, or share it with someone you think might need a gentle reminder. Subscribe to the channel so you don't miss the next story. Wishing you and your loved ones peace and light.